And it's all in history. All you have to do is read history back 1,000 years pertaining to finance and economics. And you can go, to big libraries and get the books that are necessary to do that, but they're too lazy to do that. They're too lazy to answer emails and phone calls. I answer over 300 emails a day, and I make probably maybe 5, 10 phone calls a day to help people.
And the last I heard, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chapman is retired and takes no financial gain when he helps you. I want you to know something, ladies and gentlemen. I personally have witnessed Mr. Chapman do 32 shows a week trying to follow him and get live shows on Wind Talkers Radio Network for the last 18 months. The man is the real deal. He's the most plagiarized, the most copied individual out there on news items that's 2 or 3 years old. It amazes me that I pull up news stories to put on my News and Views every day. It's free, the 3 W's, amd.elequity.com, and there's always 1 or 2 stories every day that can relate back to Mr. Bob Chapman's international forecaster from 6 months to a year ago, where he warned you. And as we go off the break, I want you to think about this. When we bring Mr. Chapman back, we're going to ask him the question that's pertinent to all of you. How much does China really hold in U.S. Treasuries? Because ABC, that's the Australian Broadcast Network, asked the Chinese ambassador that today, and he refused to give a personal answer. But there is an answer. We're going to take a break, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back in about 6 minutes, I do believe. Is that right, girl? We'll be back in about 6 minutes. We've got Mr. Bob Chapman, the International Forecaster.com. All right, guys, welcome back. We've got the beat. We've got the beat because Mr. Bob Chapman is ahead of the game. He's out there with the truth, and he's the most plagiarized financial advisor around the world. Even Marines in Great Britain say, hey, man, I heard Mr. Chapman on Wind Talker Radio Network over here the other day. 3 times, 3 different stations in the United States played here, and he was 2 days ahead of everybody else, what they're talking about this morning. I want you to know, ladies and gentlemen, I know this for a fact. This is why 183 independently owned, privately operated radio stations around the world, they got the beat. They stay on top of the beat, and Mr. Bob Chapman is constantly on the air, live and recorded playback, because he is got the truth, and nobody else does it. Wind Talkers Radio Network is proud to have Drew Malone Reigns III, Wind Talkers Radio Network, as the #1 show with Mr. Bob Chapman off the internet with Blog Talk Radio. We're live around the world, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back, Mr. Chapman. We left with a breaking point there, and we're going to try and get back to that point about the question on the how much the Chinese really have in holding the U.S. Treasuries. Do you have an answer on that?
Well, I admit to $850 billion, but I think the figure is more like $1.1 trillion. And, of course, it grows every month. They continue
ABC,
to press. Yeah.
According to ABC, this is Australian broadcasting company, the question was asked to the ambassador to China. He basically sidestepped it. After the ambassador left the meeting room, the announcer on ABC said that according to their inside people, they had been listening to financial advisors around the world. I'm assuming one of them was Mr. Bob Chapman, and they hinted at the fact that the consensus is that 1.3 to 1.5 trillion is the actual debt that China owns. So would you concur with that one?
Well, yes, but they're guessing and I'm guessing because they won't give us the numbers. So we'll say this: anywhere between 1 trillion and 1.5 trillion, and whatever it is, it's an enormous amount of money, and they can't get rid of it. What they should have been doing for years was buying more gold, but they chose not to for whatever reason. And what they should be doing now with both hands is buying gold, and they probably are, but not with both hands. The individuals in Russia and China are big buyers, in India, in the Middle East. And, of course, Europe, you can't even find any coins now. And so this is getting underway, and this is the beginning of phase 2, and it's going to be a big one.
From Yokohama, Japan, Mr. Chapman, what you just made a comment that it was hard to buy gold in Europe. I haven't had a problem here, but I did notice that when I was at one of the local pawn shops to pick some gold up, he did not have as much gold out today as he has had in the past, and I don't see a lot of buyers here, but I also do not see a lot of people pawning their gold out. Is that something that I'm going to witness more and more so here, and is I need to put more and more money into the gold as I can pick it up?
Well, first of all, I don't know where here is. It's somewhere in Europe.
Japan.
Oh, in Japan. No, they're not really
Japan.
into gold in Japan, and if I wouldn't be buying anything except bars and coins. I wouldn't buy jewelry because you always have to overpay for it. And people who sell jewelry, it usually ends up being melted down and sometimes into bars as well as being reused as jewelry. But I would continue to buy it. Believe me, the Japanese have a tremendous debt. Of course, most all of it's internal. And so, it's like we owe it to ourselves. But that doesn't mean their systems aren't going to come down. And so they get some serious problems. And I would continue to buy gold.
He comes back in and he says, while stationed at Point Mugu in California, I was able to go basically to any one of the larger malls and find small 1/10 of an ounce gold bars sold at some booth for anywhere from $90 to $125 last year. Now, obviously, it's going to be more this year, but you're right. Here in Japan, I've not been able to find those little nuggets, and finding gold coins here is like trying to find rice in the ocean. Is there a place I could buy gold and have it shipped to me, or is that something as a no-no?
It all depends on the laws in Japan, and you must find that out. And if you can import gold, then there are companies. There's companies in the United States you can buy from, or in Australia. But Australia is relatively difficult, as is New Zealand, even more difficult. But there are sellers in the United States who do export, but you got to find out what the rules are.
Okay, he comes back in. He just clarified, Mr. Chapman, I'm a chief petty officer. I'm stationed here in Yokohama. I have an AP address, and my FPO address happens to be San Francisco. So it's not like they're sending it overseas. They're sending it to my FPO address in San Francisco, which brings it to me here in Yokohama. I'm sorry I misled you to think that I'm the Japanese. I am an American citizen. I just happen to be stationed here in Yokohama.
Well, you can do that, but it depends on how long you're going to be in Yokohama. And, if you're going to be there for 3 or 4 years, that's easy. You might consider purchasing in the United States and having a relative or a friend hold the gold for you, if you want to do that. But you got to find out. It doesn't matter whether you're APO or not. I mean, they get rules, and everybody has to abide by them, and I don't know what they are, because every country is different.
I'm trying to read this question here. Mr. Chapman, can you give us a sharper view of the pattern that I perceive to be in play on the floating of gold prices, and who is the manipulating party at this time, or do you have any idea?
Well, I certainly do have the idea, and it is basically the United States government. And they can do that under an executive order called the Working Group on Financial Markets. It was instituted in August of 1988. And the ones that make those decisions are the head of the Federal Reserve, the head of the U.S. Treasury, the head of the New York Fed, the SEC, and the CFTC.